I will talk to you in a very useful series, to get to know the most important writers, who influenced literature in their distinguished works, to get to know a writer and know some important things in his life, how he lived and what he went through, where he was born, how he lived and how he died. Today I chose for you the famous English writer William Shakespeare. I will start with the series, and I will present to you today on the site of Realistic Stories an article entitled Shakespeare Under the Microscope Part 1 on the story of the life and origin of the writer William Shakespeare. The English writer William Shakespeare was born in 1564 in a small town called Stratford-on-Avon, England. The city was at that time represented 8 or 9 streets, in which around 1,500 people lived. The most important characteristic of the city is the large market, the market in which it sells. Peasants from the neighboring villages are their crops, animals and goods. The other, William Shakespeare, was born, they say that on the 26th of April 1564. It is the day of his baptism in the church. In the city governing council, his primary work was glove making and the wool and timber trade. When William was about 4 years old, his father sent him mostly to the preschool, the children's school, to learn to read and write, and there were joint private schools for boys and girls, and at the age of 6 the girls left school to learn at home at the hands of mothers or private teachers, but the boys they go to work and help make a living, or they enroll in local schools to learn the grammar of the language if parents can, as in the case of William Shakespeare, who belonged to the middle class, and his parents' cousin managed to join him in one of those schools for the middle class, and the goal of that schools is to learn and study the Latin language, as it is a condition for entering the university at that time, and is necessary for those who wish to work in politics, law, medicine, teaching, or even the church. William Shakespeare grew up in the heart of the English countryside, got to know the fields around Stratford, and the green lands where wildflowers grow, and the Arden Forest in the north. And when Shakespeare began writing plays in London, he remembered his rural childhood, and his plays were filled with descriptions a minute for flowers, trees, wild birds and animals, clouds and changing seasons. In the play Macbeth, Shakespeare describes the entry of the night, and he says, "Light and ravens intensify, a bird is drawn toward the jungle of crows. Covered the most beautiful flowers." People around Stratford, the city in which Shakespeare grew up, took advantage of all opportunities for entertainment, and they used 2 inflatable pigs' bowels to make football from them, as they practiced archery and various intelligence games, and the wild animals around the fields were not only a source of delicious meat, but also a source of fun and having fun, as people used to have a good time hunting the poor hunted birds and animals of small sizes, while the rich preferred large prey such as wild boar and gazelle. People were also going to see deer in the private garden that he built, Sir Thomas, Lucy and Charlotte, 8 kilometers east of Stratford, and for unknown years in the life of English writer William Shakespeare, we know little about it between the time he left school when he was in the 15th of his age, and between 1592 AD, when people in London described him as a promising rising star in the world of theatre, and that period is called the unknown years in Shakespeare's life, and official papers in the church indicate that Shakespeare married the daughter of a farmer called Anne Hathaway in November 1582 AM. Shakespeare was 18 at the time, and Anne was 26 years old, bearing her first child Susanna, who was born in May, and in 1585 AD Shakespeare had twins, Judith and Hamnet. The researchers tried to guess what happened during these years, but what they wrote on fiction rather than relying on facts. Researchers have been searching for hundreds of years for any evidence that indicates Shakespeare's life in this unknown period, some of whom have excavated all the documents signed in these years, Perhaps they find the name of Shakespeare while others try to which reveal the writer's knowledge of medicine, soldiers and the law, indicating that he may have worked himself in these areas. In the 80s of the 16th century, many theatrical teams visited Stratford, and they performed in the square attached to the main pub in the city. Among these groups was a famous group known as the Queen's Men Company, which made a presentation in Stratford in 1587 CE, and Shakespeare has seen the presentations of this village, whose first hero was the clown Richard Tarleton, but Shakespeare may have joined this band. Among all these professions and works that Shakespeare may work, there is a certain profession that Shakespeare engaged in, which is the theater. In the 19th century, Thomas C. attempted to demonstrate Shakespeare's knowledge of the military, which appears clearly in his works and is considered evidence that he was a recruiter for a period in which William Shakespeare's fame reached its peak as a successful and brilliant stage writer, and Shakespeare was familiar with medicine as it appears in his plays, but the characters he painted a lot were often mocked by medicine and doctors. So Macbeth said, "Let the medicine be given to dogs," while Shakespeare says in the words of Timon in Timon Athenian play, "Don't be safe by a doctor." The strange thing is that Shakespeare's plays are full of legal terms, and for this the English scholar Edmund Malone claimed in 1790 AD that Shakespeare had worked in a law firm, and in fact he was involved in many cases, which explains his knowledge of the law, which appears in his works. Perhaps William Shakespeare had learned leather industries in his father's workshop to make gloves. After leaving school, his family was facing difficult financial conditions, and perhaps the boy William had to help his mother using tools for making gloves, shoes and leather belts. If you like the video, do not forget to share it with friends. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell button to receive all news. See you in the next video.